Hey there, my name's Randy and I'm one of the staff pastors here at BNC. And for Tuesday of Holy Week, I want to give you just a small little thought. So if you know anything about me, I love a good story. And a good story has a lot of similar elements. The main character's lives start off kind of normal, and then something happens and introduces a tension in the story. Take for instance a superhero movie like the Marvel movies. There's a new bad guy on the scene and the hero's got to take him down. And they start to come out ahead and they start to win, and then you think it's all going to be okay, and then bam, plot twist, and things start to look more dire than they did 30 minutes before. And you start to wonder, are they going to survive? Can they make it? Do they have what it takes to finish? How are they ever going to come through this? Do they have what it takes to beat the enemy? Will they have enough strength? Well, the wonderful news about movie magic, you know and I know as well, is one simple truth. Their story isn't over. And 30 more minutes goes by in the movie, and the heroes have shown a refusal to give up even when life gets hard, and they put their confidence in each other, and they come out victorious. And movies are great, and I love a great story. But you know as well as I do, movies don't work like real life. Well, maybe except for one simple truth that we just mentioned. Your story isn't over. Let's say that together. Except for instead of your, I want you to put mine, making it personal. My story isn't over. Come on, you got to say it out loud. My story isn't over. Say it with confidence. My story isn't over. And it's not. When you trust and put your confidence in someone, Jesus, that you can depend on, even when the news isn't good, or even when you've done that thing you swore you would never do again, you can refuse to give up because of who your faith and trust and confidence are in. The enemy in the hero story wants the hero to give up, but the hero never does. And I don't want you to give up, but even more importantly than that, Jesus doesn't want you to give up. And we find Jesus on this Tuesday morning of Holy Week passing by a fig tree that the day before he had just previously cursed. Now, Jesus didn't curse his fig tree because he was angry, because it didn't have any fruit on it, and that wasn't it at all. Instead, this is sort of like, think of it like an acted out parable intended to teach the disciples and us a really important lesson. And you can find this in the book of Mark. So Mark in chapter 11, starting in verse 20 through verse 25. As they were passing by in the morning, they saw a fig tree, the fig tree that Jesus had just cursed, and it withered up from the roots on up through. And being reminded of this, Peter said to him, "Rabbi, look at the fig tree. Look at the fig tree you just cursed yesterday. It's withered." And Jesus answered him saying, "Have faith in God." Super cool phrase right there. "And truly I say to you," Jesus continues, "whoever says to this mountain," the mountain that they're standing on right there, "be taken up and cast into the sea they could see from the mountain where they're standing, and does not doubt in his heart, but believes that what he says is going to happen, it will be granted to him. Therefore," Jesus says, "I say to you, all things for which you pray and ask, believe that you have received them, and they will be granted to you. Whenever you stand praying, forgive if anything or anyone has anything against you, so that your Father who is in heaven will also forgive you of your transgressions." Jesus' point in this little illustration, this little kind of lived out parable, is not about literally moving a mountain. The kind of faith, the kind of confidence, the kind of trust that Jesus is talking about refers to the kind that's needed to face mountains of opposition and trials and temptations. And he knew the disciples were going to face that soon. And he knows that we face that every day in our lives. Trials and temptations and opposition and things that just challenge us. And he knew that we would need that kind of faith and that kind of trust, not to physically move a mountain, but to move mountains of oppositions. And we face them today. Jesus knew we'd all face trouble, his disciples too. That's why he says, in this world you're going to have trouble, but he wanted them to take heart, to remember, to put their trust, not in the answer of a prayer, but in the person that could answer the prayer. him, Jesus, to take heart that he had already overcome the world. And he wanted his disciples and us to know that our story isn't over. You know, it's easy to doubt when we failed. It's easy to doubt when we've done that thing we swore we would never do again, or we get that news that twists the plot in our story in a direction that we don't like. And there's tension there again. And that tension happens, and tension exists between trust and doubt, between faith and doubt, between believing that God can and doubting if God will. So what do we do about it? What do we do with that doubt, that tension between there? It's that same tension that's in that story. How do we handle that? Well, here's what I think. I think we allow that doubt to compel us, to move us closer to the truth of Jesus. Jesus was spot on as usual in his reply to Peter. He said, have faith, not in an answer, not in a solution, not in as a result, but have faith in God. While the word faith is a noun there, I like to think of faith more like a verb. And as an example of this, I think of Peter as he's in the boat and the storm's all around him and Jesus is walking on the water. And he looks out to Jesus and he says, Jesus, if that's you out there, command me to come to you walking on the water. And Jesus says, come. And then Peter, the power for Peter to get out of that boat is there the whole entire time. The power for Peter to get out and walk on the water is there the whole entire time. And Peter in faith steps out, trusting that not the water would hold him up, but that Jesus would hold him up. And the power was there the whole entire time for Peter to walk on the water. But he had to do one thing first. He had to take a step forward. He had to take a step out and a step toward Jesus. So this week, allow the doubts that you have to compel you to make you make that same step, to take that step toward Jesus. Look for signs of God all around you, showing himself in the world around you. He's not going to likely show up in a superhero movie. I'm pretty sure he won't. But he will show up in the beauty of the world around us. You know, in the trees that are beginning to bloom, and the flowers that are beginning to bloom, and the grass is starting to turn green, and the sun as it warms you as it comes up at noontime, and how warm it feels. Or it's in those things that we often take for granted. I think about the relationships in my life, the people that love me that I take for granted so much, that God has surrounded me with. His beauty is all around us if we open up our eyes and really look for him. And then that draws you to him, and you begin to see that as you take a step towards Jesus, the doubts begin to melt. You know, if you don't have that kind of relationship with him, and if you don't have those kind of relationships around you, might I invite you to discover people who will love you. And if you don't have a church home, I invite you to come visit BNC this Easter Sunday morning. Make that your step towards Jesus. And just like in the movies, your story isn't over. You are loved.